My name's Liz Gaines. I'm a reporter with Recode. And I'm very interested to hear more about this topic, especially because I think that, while definitely think of Nextdoor as a local company, maybe Twitter and Pinterest, I think more globally. So I was hoping as you introduced yourselves, you could tell us a little bit about the background of how you interact on a local basis and how long you've been kind of doing that. So why don't we start with you, Anne?
Sure, thanks very much. So I think one great piece of context for the history of Twitter is Jack Dorsey, right in the beginning, started the first SMB account himself by just going to a jeans store that he loved downtown. And so in the beginning, it was the idea of this is a great consumer product, but also thinking about, wow, this could really empower a small business's voice and make that connection. So I head up the small and medium business marketing group at Twitter globally, and we are now open in over 32 countries. What we do is kind of a two-pronged strategy. Really, one, and I think the most important part, is that we're trying to really teach people the value of just organically being on the platform and best content strategies, and thinking about what are the ways that you can really amplify your presence and kind of get your message out there to your potential customers and help drive potential sales. And on the second side, us being open in kind of our Twitter ads platform, it's really helping use all the powerful targeting tools that we already have for our big brands, our Unilevers and Nikes of the world, are the same exact tools that we give to SMBs.
Okay, and just you personally, how long have you been with Twitter, and is this always what you were working on?
Yep. So I've been at Twitter for 2.5 years. I was just saying it was myself and the head of the business unit, whiteboarding in a room back in December of 2012, and so kind of bringing it all to life. So it's been great to kind of see it all the way through. And before this, I was at Trulia running their agent marketing.
So 2.5 years is a long time in Twitter time, is what
absolutely,
you're saying?
Yes. Okay. But yes, at Trulia before for the agent marketing, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, how about at Nextdoor?
With Nextdoor, and for those that aren't familiar, because I don't think we quite have the brand recognition as Pinterest and Twitter, you should go and join. I'm sure there's a Nextdoor community in your neighborhood. And so, Nextdoor started as a communications platform really for your neighborhood, right? We're a private social network for your neighborhood. Only those members of your neighborhood can participate. And then what we've been doing is gradually expanding, where in terms of the platform, we went from your neighborhood and now you're communicating with those neighborhoods that are around you. And now we've added police and fire and city and other organizations so that they can all participate in the conversation. And so much of the conversation is about hyper-local issues. It may be crime and safety and what's happening on your street. Sometimes it may be you want to get a recommendation for a plumber or a coffee shop or a babysitter or something like that. And sometimes it may be that you're looking for some other type of advice that is relevant to you locally. And the way that I sometimes describe really what we're doing is we're really a communications platform for your local community. And where we live is central to our lives, okay? And so I think, as you pointed out, Nextdoor is very much a local initiative because we focus on the communication channels of those people that live near you, and over time we're looking to how to expand that so that you're going to communicating not just with people but the organization, the schools, the churches, the businesses, and other organizations that are part of your local community.
Yeah, let's definitely come back to that, though. I feel like sometimes Nextdoor is just a way to freak me out about all the crime that I didn't know about before Nextdoor existed. Yeah. But Joel, I'm sorry, I asked you a question then didn't give you a chance to answer it. Tell me, why is Pinterest local?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Joel. I actually run our online team, which covers small business and mid-market. So Pinterest is a service, if you haven't used it, it's really around discovery, helping people plan for their future, whether it's an upcoming wedding, whether it's planning for a new kid that's arriving, or planning for a new home. And businesses are actually a really, really important part of that discovery experience. Over 2/3 of the content that users engage with actually come from businesses. We've got hundreds of thousands of small businesses on the site. Half of them consider their market to be exclusively local, and 2/3 have some sort of physical store presence. So just to give you an example, one local business here in San Francisco named Heather Cleveland, she's an interior designer. She likes to pin her projects on Pinterest. And in doing so, people that like her type of style will discover that style, and if they're in the middle of a bathroom remodel or redoing their kitchen, may actually end up doing a project with her. In fact, she had one client that found a board of a kitchen redesign, clicked through on the website, called her up and said, I want that exact kitchen, please, can you do that? And she landed a $40,000 project. So,
and was that client in San Francisco, or how could that client know that she was in San Francisco?
Yeah, so she, oftentimes what businesses will do in the pin will actually have local metadata, so saying that you're in San Francisco. And so when someone searches for, kitchen redesign, San Francisco, Heather Cleveland stuff would show up, and so that way they know that it's something in their area.
Is the pitch for Twitter and Pinterest that you guys are such big, dominant social media sites that local is a big part of that because everything is a part of it? Or is there, why wouldn't a local interior decorating board be a better place to find a local interior decorator?
I think one thing that you talked about is, yes, there's a huge audience that is on Twitter, and a great part about it is that it's a real-time network. So, we've seen case studies or local businesses, really want to be able to target something like, I'm hungry, or thinking about running this afternoon, and we offer, geo-targeting and specifically thinking about San Francisco. And so the same way that a McDonald's could think about this, or a large brand, we're also offering kind of the same audience size. And again, it's a level playing field with being able to think about that conversation.
What percentage of tweets are geotagged?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I know because we are 80% mobile, most people are geotagging on that. So knowing that most people are on their phone and on the go, and geotagging is enabled for most people on a mobile device.
Is it on by default?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe over half of tweets are geotagged?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. What about for Pinterest?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that we have a very large audience, and so we see a combination of people using Pinterest in a local context, but they're also using it in a non-local context. So we see a mixture. In fact, a lot of the businesses that are finding success are omni-channel. So they have a local presence, but they also have a website in case someone outside of their local market wants to transact with them. They can conduct a sale that way as well. So we see a mixture.
Okay. Does Nextdoor have an advertising feature? Is there a way for a business to set up an official presence?
Yeah, we have not started monetizing yet, and we have a number of businesses, people that are part of businesses that come on just as neighbors and communicate, and we're working now to figure out the right way that a business may come on, but it'll be similar to what we've done with city and police and fire, where it's important to maintain the privacy of the neighborhood and the neighborhood communication, because that's one thing that's really important for Nextdoor. It's really about trust, and we spend a lot of time making sure that when you're having a conversation, you can trust that the only people that are listening to that conversation are those people that live in your neighborhood or in your nearby neighborhood. And so as we think of integrating businesses, we want to think about doing it in both an organic fashion where they can communicate and be part of the conversation, but not at the same time still maintain that privacy for those conversations that are occurring within the neighborhood.
So do you see it ending up like a directory of businesses, or?
I'm not sure if directory, ultimately, I think that as you think of a business and what they want, that just having yet another directory that lists all the local businesses, to be blunt, it's kind of boring. Yeah. There are a lot of directories out there. I think we want to make it much more about conversation and community and about those businesses and organizations that really are the ones that are part of the community, okay, and are the favorites of that community, because as you think of your local community, all of us can think of businesses and organizations that you think of. When I say, what are those establishments that are central to your local community? They think of certain places where people go, they gather, they talk, and so I think we will focus much more on building that community rather than just having a directory or a listing of all of those businesses or organizations that may exist, because I think there are already other places that offer more of a directory experience.
Right. So in some ways, actually, Nextdoor has the inverse problem of these guys, because you're trying to be locally focused. How have you thought about growing and reaching a larger audience while still maintaining that kind of tight radius? I mean, I've also found as a Nextdoor user, I'm not just going to complain about you, that sometimes I'm getting information from networks that are much looser than my own, and probably I'm imagining that's some kind of a growth tactic that makes it feel less intimate than it was. So I imagine you're kind of always fighting between keeping things local and growing.
Yeah, the way, so one thing that we've, as we look at this, there is that tension, but what we see is we think that it's working. So in fact, we want to be very true to what is our core value proposition, which is that local communication, because we don't want to start adding in what I'll call kind of these global things that really have nothing to do with that sense of what is my local community.
Right, you have Twitter or Pinterest for that.
Right. I think that's one of the mistakes that companies often make is they try to be everything to everybody and they lose the sense of who they are. I suspect that what you're seeing in terms of conversations that aren't as central to to your interest right there, as opposed to it being a growth tactic, I suspect it's more a factor that as more people come into the community, different people talk about different things and also think about what is local differently. And we still have a lot to do to try to understand how to customize that stream for you. Mm-hmm. And the way I phrase it is, the phrase local is really contextual to a particular activity. If there's a pothole on your street, local is the block in front of you. And if you're 4 blocks away, the pothole on your street doesn't matter to you, right? But if you lost your dog, it may be a 4-block radius, right? But if there's an event that you're interested in, then if you live in Bernal Heights, you may be interested in events in the Castro, because you still think of that as a local event, okay? So
and you look like you want to jump in.
Yeah. Well, I think exactly to your point, I think the rings of local kind of, they can be very flexible. I mean, one thing that we found was last year, actually for the last 2 years, we've partnered with Amex for Shop Small. And I think one of the value that we brought as Twitter was not every local business owner has the storefront and is going to have the foot traffic on Shop Small Saturday. And so the idea here was, listen, let's have you join the conversation. Let's invite you to a virtual neighborhood for people who might be looking for, specifically shopping for, on your website, or even sending you to any of your different services, or potentially if you offered a gift card, you could be doing e-commerce on Shop Small. And so that's one of the big things is we love to make sure that when we're talking to our local business owners and they're saying, why should I invest on this? It's if you want to have a web presence, even just driving people to your Twitter profile page, the idea here at the end is we will help you reach an audience that may be not just several streets over, but somebody that's very interested that wants to interact with you based on essentially the value of your business.
When you're talking about social media and local, obviously Facebook has some role to play here, right? And they have their whole business is oriented around targeting, which would seem to be at the heart of local. So how will you guys compete with that, or how do you intend to be different from what Facebook would offer when they know so many details about and stalk us all day?
So part of it is what we've seen with that people contextualize their use of social media apps to different use cases, right? And it used to be that people thought there'd be one social network to rule them all, right? And we realized that's not the case. And so when you think of your professional network, you think of going to LinkedIn. You don't think of going to Facebook. And at least for many of the people that are on Nextdoor, and I know this is my experience, when I think of Facebook, I don't think of it as a local communications platform. I don't think if I want to sell something. Now, some people do, but there's so many people that are part of my Facebook network that is always yelling at me, global, 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 that I think it's very hard for us to sort of contextually shift on that social media platform. So I feel like what we're doing and what Facebook are doing is complementary, that sometimes there will be local targeting and local ads on Facebook. Okay, but I don't think the use cases, the organic use cases of the platform are actually at odds with each other. I think our data shows that roughly about 2% of your Facebook graph is in your neighborhood or nearby neighborhood is close to you. Your Facebook graph tends to be much more global.
Okay, that's a good answer. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the local opportunity on Pinterest really is around getting in front of users that are planning for their future. And while that may happen on other services, we think that's something that we are lasered focused on. Again, whether you're cooking a meal and trying to be a better cook, or you're planning a vacation, users have an intent on the site that's really unique. And this is an opportunity for local businesses to get in front of that with content that will align with their interests. So that's how we differentiate.
I think for us, also thinking about it as a complementary strategy, a lot of the small businesses that advertise on Twitter, we know are also thinking about their Facebook strategy and their Pinterest strategy and their Instagram strategy. I think there's really three things. One, it's not always the same audience, I think, as both of you guys have highlighted. We do think that there are definitely other power users of Twitter and kind of a unique community you can reach besides just thinking about Facebook. We love and we are truly believe in the real-time network and being able to talk about people. You're out on a Saturday afternoon. There's a hashtag for this conference. It's a way to honestly go to a global platform to meet very locally and connect locally because of that real-time being first in our product. And then lastly, we really have put a lot of effort and we really believe in the value of small businesses that are kind of looking and trying to grow their follower base, because it's very valuable that we don't gate any content. If you're tweeting something out, it will go into your followers' feeds. So we think of it as being as powerful as email and maybe even more powerful in the idea that you're always going to be talking to them, potentially on real time, potentially out in the community when you can reach them and they might be thinking about stopping in for your business.
Right. There's no algorithm, but I also don't read my Twitter feed from start to finish. That would be exhausting.
Absolutely. And one other thing, believe me, it would be very exhausting. I've pulled through there. One other thing that we have done is we just released in the last couple months a product called Quick Promote. So instead of going in and setting up your whole Twitter campaign, it's a 2-click and being able to amplify your presence based on your followers and the exact target that you're thinking about. And you can jump into that from our Twitter analytics dashboard, which has been redesigned and we think is the #1. It's completely free. We say for every business that's on Twitter, you should be logging in to analytics.twitter or ads.twitter and looking at your dashboard, seeing what is getting the most engagements, seeing where are the followers that are following you, who's interacting with your tweets. And if you find something that's really working, it's now 2 clicks to be able to quickly get that message out.
What do you see as the future of local at Twitter? How important will that be in the future? And is it kind of expanding on what you're saying, or is there a broader vision you can articulate?
Absolutely. I mean, last November we did our kind of big analyst day and brought everybody in. And to be honest, SMB was great. It was first and foremost. It's one of the centerpieces for thinking about the growth strategy. And again, it's not just let's think about the advertising revenue and platform. It's really thinking about a really strong, great community of local SMBs that have great things to say, and having them come on as our user base. So our team, as I said, I joined when it was just 2 of us 2.5 years ago. And we've just had explosive growth, and definitely we've been a top priority for funding to kind of grow that in the future.
How many SMBs are on Twitter now?
I don't have the updated current one, but we know that there are basically tens of millions, essentially, that we've identified from our prospect base, and that's active users that are out there that are using the platform for business intent. So we see a huge upside in this.
Am I an SMB then? I'm using the platform for business intent.
You potentially would be somebody that we'd think that would be interested in Quick Promote. Probably not just thinking about Twitter ads, but I think that's the one nice thing about SMB is we don't have very distinct barriers, and I'm sure you think about this as well as Pinterest, is that if you want to reach more people and you want to use our platform, we're very open. So we might have a reporter that's trying to amplify something that you've written or find a follower base.
Yeah, we're shameless self-promoters.
Exactly. and we definitely do see a vertical of people that look to use the platform that way. We also see large businesses that haven't jumped into thinking about social yet too. So there are some more traditional businesses. I remember a few years ago we had large kind of like Deloitte Consulting Recruiting was a small business. It's not Deloitte, but it's their a smaller initiative that are there. Though what we want to do is first and foremost build it so that it's the easiest way that somebody, be it that's just coming to the Twitter for the first time, or just one person that wants to do a quick hit to amplify more. That's kind of the vision of where we would like to go with SMB.
Okay. And for Pinterest, is your vision to allow people to do more local searches? I mean, I know that you've articulated, or Pinterest has articulated, Ben has articulated that Pinterest is really about getting people offline, right? Getting people to do things in the world. So that would seem to push them towards actual physical things that exist, like businesses. But how are you going to make that happen, given that your product is often around kind of like finding things that look like this or finding things that inspire you in the future?
Yeah, so we have an amazing set of data around people's interests by virtue of the things that they're pinning. And so we've been trying to harness that data as much as possible to create a better discovery experience, whether you're searching for something on our search products, whether you're looking through a category feed. And so the local data is just another dimension of the interest data around a user. That
like what would it be on par with? What is local on par with?
Sorry.
Oh, it's just another dimension. Like
Oh, so it's on par with, for example, if you pin a recipe, we now know what type of food that you're interested in. You're interested in Mediterranean cuisine versus Italian cuisine. We know that you are pinning stuff in San Francisco versus pinning stuff in New York. And so we would use that to better tune kind of what you're seeing across Pinterest. We did launch about a year ago our Promoted Pins advertising product, and one of the initial features in that product was geo-targeting, so that you can actually hone in on a specific DMA. So I think over time you'll see that we'll continuing to add more data, including local data, to really better refine kind of the experience for users.
Do you know what percentage of promoted pins are localized or targeted based on location?
I don't know offhand, but I think in general we've seen a pretty similar mix of businesses using our paid product as we do organically. And so again, we've got hundreds of thousands of businesses, half consider their market to be local. So my guess is it's somewhere around that.
When will Nextdoor add some of these features that you're talking about as out there in the future?
So we're starting to pilot some of the things now. And so the way we often roll these things out is we start pilots and test things out within one neighborhood or one community. So for example, up in Marin right now, we're testing out how some of the small businesses can participate on the platform. And so we have a small test there. And often one thing that we...
Can you describe what's being tested?
Basically what's being tested is just allowing organizations or businesses to come and be on the platform and get, in that particular case, what we have is people have to opt in to having it put into their feed, as opposed to an opt-out. Most posts are, the person who's posting controls the distribution. In this case, the person who's consuming controls the distribution and determines what are the organizations or businesses that they want to hear from.
So how would I even know that I could choose from those organizations?
Well, this is where we're kind of seeing how we have the ability for you to find some of the organizations. This is also where we're seeing what is the right thing? How do people want to hear from the organizations? Part of what we're trying to see is what is the organic value that these organizations are providing as part of the communication. And so one thing that we need to do is let it develop for a while, because one thing that I've learned very much so with Nextdoor is that these type of trusted communications, you need to be patient in terms of having them develop and having them really be organic to the community. And so you can't just sit here and figure out with your smart brain what all these things will want to do, because the local business, local organizations, and the people in the community need to figure out what is the information that is interesting to them. So we're basically watching
So
to
does
see
that
how
mean
things
that
develop.
your philosophy of product development might be a little bit more slow and deliberate at Nextdoor?
I think it varies. I think with particular when we talk about trust and privacy, we're slow and deliberate. Okay, but on other things, I don't think we're slow and deliberate at all. I think in this case, though, when you have something that is working well, you want to maintain the integrity of that trust and privacy, because that is the thing. People. It's interesting. A lot of people don't even know that there's this company behind Nextdoor. When they see some article and they say, "Well, I didn't even think that there was a company behind this product. This is our platform."
That's such an interesting reaction. So they think it's like an email group or something.
It's their platform, because the thing is, everybody knows about Pinterest or Facebook or Twitter, about this global communication network, right? But if you're living in Kansas City, what do you think about Nextdoor? You think about, well, Nextdoor is the thing that I use with my neighborhood or my nearby neighborhood, and you think of it as yours, not as this, global brand or anything like that. And so it's really important, and that's one reason why there's so much engagement and passion about Nextdoor in terms of in those local communities, because people feel a sense of ownership, and so it's really important to protect that.
So you're kind of an invisible company.
I don't know if I would use that phrase, but because in fact, invisible would suggest that you're not aware. Oh, you meaning the company itself? That makes sense, right?
Yes.
The corporate entity.
I'm not saying you don't exist.
I was interesting. Invisible. That doesn't sound like a compliment, but no, meaning the corporate entity, right? That people don't think of the corporate entity of Nextdoor. They think about their local community, and as we think of businesses, right? One thing I've often said is, you know, we're basically going to a world of, if you will, hyper-global and hyper-local, where things are either being Amazonified or they're being very, very kind of owned by the local community. And when you think of local businesses, the very lifeblood of their success is engaging in their local community, because that's why people choose to use that local business as opposed to getting something 5% cheaper and shipped overnight. And so we feel like we want that to be in a integral part where they are part of the community and they are contributing to that local community, as opposed to, you know, just trying to sell more things.
Yeah, those are two really interesting tensions. I'd be interested to hear your perspective on it. Pinterest and Twitter is about kind of privacy and ownership when you're getting down to targeting someone's precise location, and also you were just saying
the privacy, ownership, I'm not sure which one.
well, let's start there. Go ahead.
I mean, I think one thing about our targeting is that we're tapping into the conversations that you're putting out there in public in the real world. Like, Twitter is a public platform. The way we like to think or position ourselves is a global town square. So you're having these discussions, you're saying how you're feeling, you're, you know, excited about a television show that you're watching or a specific brand you're talking with. And, you know, in the global town square, there's also going to be local businesses. And we want to kind of tap into that. So we're not using anything.
But I kind of don't get that, because everyone has a different global town square, right? Like, my Twitter experience is not going to be the same as anyone else's. It's not like we're all showing up for something. We're only showing up for who we've subscribed to, right?
Well, you're showing up, so the feed that you're subscribing to is who you're interacting with. But if you're using a hashtag, if you're tweeting out there, you know, the same way that you may not be following me, but if we both start talking about, you know, an accident or the same street festival in San Francisco, that's how we're connecting. And you may not be following a local business, but the great part is there's a discovery that if you are very excited about specifically like a type of interest, we're giving an opportunity for at least one interface with that small business. I love, one of our best case studies was actually a small camping retailer that is located in Kentucky. And they're named Rock Creek, and basically what their idea was, you know, listen, we're small, but we just invested a lot in a website and a platform. Let's make sure that we kind of grow our follower base and just be, you know, great with camping trips, talking about the state parks, all of these different ideas, and basically set themselves up for Black Friday to not only hit the local community to think, hey, shop here first, think about us first, did a great program where they had a big follower base and then tweeted out, you know, here's our sale, we're giving you guys exclusive access. And that was their best sales day ever, by just saying, you know what, let's try to find people, you know, through our promoted followers campaign that are interested in our similar targets. People stayed engaged and were excited to see them in their Twitter feed because they're giving out great content.
They actually provided useful information.
Yep, and then so when they, you know, we always say it's the 80-20 principle. Organically, you should be giving great content, and then 20% at the end is when you have a great sale, people are going to want to listen.
I just wanted to jump in on with Twitter. One thing, I think there's this interesting similarity in use cases between Twitter and Nextdoor that people often don't think of. You see it in when there's some emergency or catastrophe, like a flood or a fire or an earthquake or something like that. You see tons of activity on Nextdoor with local people looking for help in their neighborhood, you know, trying to get information about what's happening. You also see it on Twitter, as people are sharing information that is very proximate about what gas station may have gas, right? And that happens on both of our platforms, and I think in some ways there's a complementary nature on that, because it is the fact that they're using a global platform, but the information is only relevant locally.
Okay, but come back to privacy. How do people feel about this? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, on Pinterest, we have a set of controls that we give both businesses and users to be able to protect their privacy. So as a user, if there's content that you don't want to see, you can always block that account. You can choose who you want to follow, not follow.
But it seems like we're all kind of used to like products following us around, right? Like I was shopping for outdoor furniture lately, and now it's like a horde of zombie outdoor furniture ads coming to attack me everywhere I browse on the internet.
Yeah.
It's true.
You know, that was kind of leading to kind of where I was going, which is like for us, it's really around creating a better experience for users. And so, for example, with our promoted pins offering, if you see something that is not interesting to you, it was interesting, but maybe is no longer interesting to you, you can let us know that. You can hide that pin. And then we use that as data to better inform what type of content you may want to see in the future. And so we're just constantly trying to improve the quality of the experience so that we're only putting in content in front of you that you actually, as a user, want to see that aligns with whatever your interest is.
And the second part, the thing I had a mental blip on, I think that Dan was talking about, was this kind of Amazon world versus local business. And I wonder how much that kind of like pride and loyalty is really a part of what you're doing. Is that kind of emotional feel of local?
I mean, I think for us, I love the local businesses I follow in Noe Valley, you know, around mid-market, you know, all throughout San Francisco. And again, I'm excited for the content that they're sharing. I'm excited to see what they're, you know, focused on. I love the SF-made businesses. That's somebody that I'm really excited to sign up for. First, maybe a larger global brand. I don't actually follow a lot of those because, you know, not all the time is there an idea of thinking about how's that content going to be relevant to my day-to-day life. I like the idea of discovery and kind of opportunity there. So we actually think because we're a content-first platform and we're real-time, and local businesses have a much more compelling story to tell, I would say and argue, in my opinion, there's a lot of reasons to follow that local business next door if they want to interact and give me great information.
Yeah, and for Pinterest, it's really around building communities around your specific interest. And sometimes those local interest communities are local, and sometimes they are not local. And so there could be like, you know, favorite coffee shops in San Francisco, and there's a really passionate set of users and businesses that are connecting around that interest. And there could be kind of non-local use cases as well. But core to our service is really around connecting businesses and users to common interests.
Someone who knows what's going on, since we're the first panel of the day, do we have an opportunity to ask for audience questions? If anyone could fly, that would be okay? All right, we'll do that after this one. Someone suggested kind of a theory of the world to me that blew my mind a little, and maybe it's familiar to all of you guys who are thinking about this every day, but the idea that when we're moving from like a web-first to a mobile-first world, the idea of an SMB really changes because it's more of a messaging relationship than a set up a web page that has your address and how to reach you, maybe someday, maybe a menu. Specifically, the example that was cited to me was in China on WeChat, where a lot of businesses are coming online for the first time. They're coming online with WeChat accounts, which means that they are basically setting up a direct messaging channel with all of their customers. And that's dramatically different in terms of contact and promotion and long-term relationships than a web-first online identity. And I wonder how, is that shift really so abrupt for your businesses? Because each of you guys are both web and mobile platforms. I would say all of you maybe trend more mobile, but I don't know if that's true for Nextdoor, actually.
Yeah, no, we're more mobile.
It is, yeah.
Absolutely.
So are you kind of shifting into this world where you can really create these direct relationships, and how is that as significant as it seems?
The way I think of it is ultimately it's about communication. And in fact, in the pre-mobile world, you created a web page, and the way you communicated with people is you had to hope that somehow they came to that page, and then you found ways to try to push that page in front of them. And now, in a mobile world, of course, since we have the communication device sitting in our pocket, communications is a much richer and more, synchronous interaction. Okay, and it's more contextual to where you are. And so I think one thing that we certainly think about when we think of small businesses and local communication is really thinking about, how do the local organizations and small businesses want to communicate with members? And often that is going to be not in just some static page that they come to, but in more of a push interaction where they're getting more, both temporally relevant, locally relevant contextual information, and where the conversation can be two ways, because the thing about the web page is it's a one direction blast, and you have no ability to hear from your customers and get information from them.
On Pinterest, 80% of the usage is on mobile, and so is the distant #1 use case that we find users engaging with businesses. So the main method of communication on Pinterest is the pin versus using text. And so, but I think because it is mainly on the smartphone, there's tons of use cases that we can start to think about in a local context to help businesses better connect with those users. And so we're just at the beginning of thinking through what those use cases would be, but there's some interesting opportunities to explore there.
Does that already work on Pinterest? You know, if I start liking someone's account, that I end up having a messaging relationship with them?
What do you mean by messaging?
Oh, that I can find that account holder and just send them a message.
Yeah, we have a messaging feature.
Right. Is that happening? Are people using it?
Yeah, people are using our, both users are messaging each other and also businesses and users are exchanging as well. So that's something that we have today for users to use.
Okay.
And very similarly, 80% of our usage is mobile today. And the idea that you're real time, you're out and about, you have your phone. We've seen a lot of small businesses, to your point, say, they're not worried about that mobile adaptive website right now. It's just easier to have a mobile adaptive Twitter account and a page where you can tweet out your updated menu versus thinking about like every night uploading that PDF and making sure it looks perfect on the mobile platform.
Oh, interesting. So the standards are a little lower.
Exactly. It's really easy to get that message out and kind of push out, and instead of going and trying to do, work with like a web CMS. Yeah. The other idea too is that we've done a lot of research on what is the value of a follower, and this idea of followers of specific local business or small and medium businesses are 72% more likely to purchase from them. And so that idea of, as you're curating that base, you're talking to them in content, we've actually seen that lift in people saying, I'm voting to hear from you more, and it makes it highly more likely to drive those real world results of either purchase, store visit, we even see great with like lead gen for more professional services.
Okay, do any of you have any questions? Go ahead. Is there a way that you want to communicate? Great, there's a mic coming towards you right here.
Okay, so following up on the last question of, in a mobile world, small business, maybe they don't have a computer in their store, but they've got their phone, but they've got a Facebook account, they've got a Twitter account, they've got a Pinterest account, maybe they've got a Nextdoor account now. Did they spend all day?
They're in Marin.
Right, but I mean, how many accounts of these can they have? Yeah. Are we going to some point where there has to be some coordination where they tweet out once and it goes to everybody, and how does that work? And I mean, I know we're all trying to win. Where does it go? How much time do they have?
I can take a step. So I think the answer really depends upon what the business's objective is and which platform they think they can find the most success with. There are third-party companies out there that bring all this stuff together and simplify it. One thing that I would just highlight that's unique to Pinterest is we're finding that the life of content is actually much longer than maybe other services out there. Pretty commonly we see that businesses who pin something like a year ago, like we had one business who was pinning Thanksgiving recipes last year, or 2 years ago, sorry. Then the previous Thanksgiving, it started getting repinned again and clicked through again. And so that reduces the cost of actually creating content if you know you're going to get a better return over a longer period of time. So that's just something specific to Pinterest.
I know one thing I've often thought is, I think the answer is yes, they have enough time if each one of those channels actually delivers more customers to them. And so in fact, it's actually far easier now than it was 10 years ago. And so really, I think what's going to happen is you have to evaluate each of the channels independently, and often they are additive in terms of how they drive business to you. And I think I'm sure there are more than enough tools already out there and more to come where it makes it easier for you, but that isn't required. Because to the extent if you're going to use a distribution channel to get your message out, then that channel needs to deliver customers and value to you. And I think what you see is if you're going to do it 3 times, each delivering value, you'll do it a 4th time if that 4th time delivers value.
Yep. And I think, again, going back to your goal for each of the channels, so knowing who is the audience there and what you specifically want to use it. We have some small businesses that use Twitter as, you know, the easiest customer service platform. They can kind of talk back and forth. They can answer questions. They can use it for a variety of ways, but that's the way that they found best. And maybe they found another social platform that's working better for, you know, inspiration. So really thinking about having a goal and not trying to make every single social platform, every piece of, you know, essentially your sales or your marketing strategy, knowing who you want to talk to and kind of how you want to use it as a goal is how I think about being kind of using all the different social media networks as complementary.
So I think that we're not going to set the conference back by going too much longer, but it looks like you can find where to follow these guys on Twitter. You may also be able to find them on Pinterest. You might be able to move to Dan's neighborhood and follow him on Nextdoor.
I have the
Let's
same
move
handle
to
on
Heritage
Pinterest.
Oaks Park in Los Altos and we can chat.
Okay. But thank you so much for joining and great conversation.